Hey guys, how are y'all doing? Don't know if I'll get a whole lot of traffic on this live stream, but I wanted to do this to kick off the new year. I kind of took a little break during the holidays, so I just wanted to do a little live stream, kind of do a Q&A with anyone who hops on. But I'll be first talking about some of the goals I have for the year, and then if any of y'all have any kind of gardening related questions, I'll be happy to answer them as we go. But I kind of procured a list of like 50 or so questions just to go through and talk about some of the goals for the year. But thank you for watching Garden Theory. It's been really fun. Um, so we started the channel back in March 2024, and it's been a pretty fun ride since then. I've always kind of had this idea of doing a like a gardening related channel, and it's been a lot of fun to finally be able to put it together and to start this kind of project I've been doing for the past year. And we've had pretty good success this year. And I guess I'll talk a little bit about what we did last year leading up to 2025. And I do have my chat open on my laptop here, so I'll try to be good at answering any questions y'all have in the chat for me. Again, I don't know if I'll get a whole lot of traffic in this live stream, but if you have any questions, feel free to put them down, and I'll do my best to make sure I see them and answer them as quickly as possible. But going back to the progress we did last year in 2024, we had a lot of pretty good results. Going into it, I knew it was going to be kind of a slow journey. It can take anywhere from 2 to 5 years to kind of get a channel kicking off, to get monetized and bigger and things like that. So I knew it was going to take a while, and I think we've had a lot of good success. We're not even a year in yet, and we already have almost 1,200 subscribers, which is pretty good. The main point of focus that I've been kind of focused on is the watch hours and the viewer retention rate throughout the video. Those have been my main two indicators, and so far we've been pretty good on both of those. We're really close to being monetized. I just need, I think, like 400 more watch hours, so we're pretty close. So I'm hoping if I'm able to have a pretty good lineup of videos for y'all, hopefully we might be able to get to that point by our year mark, is what I'm currently thinking. But as far as topics, I guess let me go to my question and we'll kind of go through this. But my first question I wanted to talk with y'all about is what inspired to create Garden Theory, and kind of going into some of the topics I wanted to cover on this channel. So a lot of my kind of background is in horticulture. I went to school. I went to BYU, Idaho, to get a horticulture degree. So I have a bachelor's in horticulture. Um, and when I first started going to school, I didn't know I was going to be doing that as my degree. I was pretty unsure on what I wanted to study in at the time. There's a couple things that I knew I wanted to do. I wanted to have something kind of realistic that I could find a good job for pretty easily. I've always enjoyed kind of nature and the outdoors. I'm not necessarily like a redneck or anything, but I enjoy like wildlife. I really enjoy bird photography. I did that for a couple years, and this year I kind of want to get back into it, see if I can find some good birding spots in my area. Um, really enjoy seeing different landscapes. Enjoy animals and working with things. So I kind of like that aspect of things. I didn't want to be stuck in an office. And I wanted to have just something that I think would be fun to learn. And so when I first took, like my first horticulture class was an intro to landscape design. And I had a lot of fun with that class because growing up in high school, I've always also been very artistic. I really love drawing and sketching growing up. But I knew doing an art degree probably wouldn't be the best career-wise unless I wanted to do something in graphic design, which didn't seem a whole lot interesting to me. So seeing the landscape design phase, kind of meshing the two interests I had together. Really just kind of clicked for me as soon as I started taking the class, and I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I've kind of just dived in ever since then. And so going fast forwarding from college to now, I'm working and we live in Arkansas now. I've always kind of liked the idea of doing a YouTube channel. Growing up, I did fun little videos with my siblings growing up, and I liked the idea of making videos. Um, and I really didn't have a whole lot of experience doing it besides, just Windows Movie Maker on my old PC that I used to have. That was pretty much my only experience in video editing. And I did a little bit of computer stuff, but not really a whole lot. Wasn't super familiar with it, so that's something I kind of wanted to learn and teach myself. And that's kind of what I've done on this channel is I've pretty much been teaching myself how to do video editing, lighting, and camera and stuff like that. And so I've slowly improved since I started. I got a used camera, which I'm using right now in this live stream, which has a lot better quality. Before I was just using my phone, and it was doing okay, but I wanted something a little bit more clear. And I got a good microphone. I got decent lighting, and that's helped quite a lot. If you watch some of the older videos, the quality's not quite as good as it has been in the last couple months or so. So it's kind of been a whole progress for me. But talking about different video topics I cover, probably the main focus I had going into it is I really wanted to teach good gardening practices. There's a lot of, I would say, like mediocre practices in the landscaping industry. I find people sometimes have a hard time figuring out how to take care of their landscape, and they don't always make the best decisions, even not just residential homeowners, but sometimes landscape companies themselves as well. So I wanted to try to provide a good source of information for homeowners, primarily who wanted to learn how to take care of their landscape so that they'd be able to watch a video about landscape design and be able to learn something from it and to apply it in their yard. That was kind of my primary focus going into it. I also wanted to do videos showcasing horticulture as a career for people, especially my age or younger, because it's really something that isn't talked about a whole lot. You don't really see a whole lot of people promoting jobs in the in the green industry, but it's a very active industry and career right now. They can't find enough people to fill some of the roles. So especially if you have a college degree in any kind of from turf management to landscaping, horticulture, any kind of degree in that pretty much can guarantee you a job almost anywhere. And so that's another thing I kind of want to focus on, which I haven't focused a ton. I've really only done one video on that topic. So that might be something I dive a little bit more into. And I also just wanted to have some fun videos. I've done a few where I've gone to different gardens and stuff like that. I wanted to kind of explore with y'all and be able to talk about fun ideas, maybe new plants that are coming up and just kind of fun things like that. So those are kind of the main topics that I wanted to discuss. And from this past year so far, it seems like landscape design has been my number one topic. I would say probably landscape design and fixing landscape mistakes are probably my number two and number one topics that have gotten the most reception out of people. So my best video I think that I have so far was one of the first videos I did. It was like 7 steps to create your dream design or your dream landscape design. And that one has almost 40,000 views total, and that one's probably been has been my number one. I've had a couple that's been um, in like the 1,000 range and one like 4,000. But the majority of my videos have been a couple hundred views most of the time. anywhere from like 200 to 900 views has been the majority of my videos, which is pretty typical for a starting channel. So I'm not really super stressed about views or anything. I'm hoping to replicate, and that's kind of what I've been trying to do the last couple of weeks, is try to replicate the success from that one video by talking about landscape design, but I haven't quite hit that mark yet. So that's what I'm trying to figure out how to replicate that so I can get those better view counts. But I think that's just gonna have to come with time and practice as I go on. Um, so I'll just go on to the next question I had here. What was the story behind the name Garden Theory? So I chose the name Garden Theory for a couple of reasons. One of them was slightly based off of one of my favorite YouTubers called MatPat, who does like game theory and film theory and stuff like that. So I really like the channel names and how he's done that. And I watched a lot of interviews with him and how he's gone on his journey. And so I thought Garden Theory would be a pretty fitting name for this, somewhat inspired off of that, but as well as with horticulture and gardening in general, there's really not one correct way to do things. Everyone has their own style, their own taste, and there's pretty much almost an infinite number of ways to do things as long as you're doing things that are horticulturally sound. You really can't go too wrong with the design if you know your stuff and you're doing the best you can. You really can't mess up too bad. Of course, there's always little surprises and mistakes that happens, but generally, there's almost an infinite amount of possibilities you can do with the landscape design. And in the landscape classes I took in school, we would all have the same prompt of a landscape design, but every single one of those people in that class would come up with a very unique landscape design. And I think that kind of emulates in the title of this channel, Garden Theory. I don't want to seem like I'm the one that has the only right way to do things. I'm just trying to provide a educational source for you to be able to go on and do your own thing. So hopefully that translates well in the videos I do. I never want to try to come off um, as a know-it-all or something like that. I want to try to just be an informative source to be able to give and to take with people. So let's see. Looking through some of my questions to see what would be a good one to do. Um, I guess I'll talk about some of the ideas I do for videos, and kind of going into 2025. What are some of my plans? What videos do I want to do? Video schedule and stuff like that. Um, since the beginning of the channel, my goal's always kind of been to post at least once a week. I haven't been the greatest at that. There's been a couple weeks where I've missed, and most recently I've kind of taken this holiday season off, so I didn't really post much in December, and we're already almost through the first week of January, and I haven't posted anything yet. So I'm still kind of roughly going for at least once a week. But if there's ever a week I don't post, that's just because my life was too busy. This is very much a side project. I just do it in whatever free time I have throughout the week. So I have to give or take something in my schedule. So this isn't my number one priority. It's definitely on the side. But I have a lot of fun doing this, and I want to try to invest more time into it this year. I want to be a little bit better at posting at least once a week as best that I can. But as far as different video topics I'd like to cover, I would like to do a little bit more on the landscape design. I've been trying to figure out what my audience would like to see from me. That's something that can help me out a lot if you put in the comments what you would like to see me do. I've thought about doing live streams where I'm doing a landscape design on camera and y'all can chime in and stuff like that. I've thought about doing a lot more landscape design videos. I'm like, the main question I have is, should I go make a video, like, because landscape design is this whole entire process that's quite a lot of parts to it. And I don't know if it's better to do an overview video or if it's better to do a video on each part and spend a lot more time on the whole process. I don't know if people would enjoy that as much. Because like the my best video so far is where I talk about the entire process and kind of break it down into steps, and that's what people seem to like. Um, I can talk about landscape mistakes and how to fix them. People seem to respond well to that as well. So I might do more videos like that in the future. But I don't want to repeat the same thing over and over again for the entire year. So you'll probably expect a few garden tours from me. This spring, especially, I want to go. There's a little Japanese garden near where I live, and I want to go visit that and do a video on that. And I think that would be pretty good. But it seems like the garden tours don't do quite as well as the landscaping design videos. So it's always kind of a balance on what would be the best. And it's a little tough with my current situation, so I'm currently renting. So it's not like I have a garden space that I can walk, like I can physically walk with y'all and do projects and stuff like that. So I'm a little limited by that. Um, Probably won't be able to have a space like that for probably a little while. But hopefully once I do have some space to work with, we'll have a lot more fun and I'd imagine the channel will shift into more of a I don't know, like a homestead type channel maybe where I do videos doing projects instead of talking about the topics as much. So I'd imagine the channel will eventually shift into that kind of focus at that point. But that would probably be more of a long-term plan. So it'll be mostly pretty much the same. I might talk a little bit more about horticulture careers, but that's more of a limited audience as well. So I'm trying to reach out to a broad audience while connecting with uh, certain topics as well. Let's see. So I guess I'll talk about just moving on to some common gardening questions and mistakes for the remainder part of this live stream. I'll probably keep going for another 20 to 30 minutes or so, unless we get more people that hop on to ask questions and something. But I'll just talk about what are some common landscaping mistakes and solutions I can offer. Um, so there's quite a lot of common landscape mistakes. I don't have any of them written down, so I'm just going to go off the top of my head. But if you have any questions for me, again, feel free to just comment them down and I'll do my best to respond as quickly as I can. But probably the number one mistake, I'll just kind of go one thing at a time. So I'll talk about trees first. Probably the common mistake with those occur at planting. A lot of times people either plant them too deep or too high with the root balls. Probably the worst one to do is planting them too deep and then covering the crown of the root crown of the base of that tree with mulch as well. And they just kind of drown that poor thing in mulch. That's probably the number one thing I see. A lot of times you hear people call them mulch volcanoes, where they just have them piled super high. At the neighborhood Walmart near where I live, they have this row of, I believe they're serviceberry trees. They're like multi-stem serviceberries, and they are just awful for me to look at each time I go there because the mulch is just piled all on top of them. I'm like, why are you doing this to these trees? But the reason why it's not super good for them because you're really not supposed to cover the crown where the roots, where the trunk of the tree comes and it flares out. Or sorry, it's not called the crown; it's called the root flare. Um, but you're really not supposed to cover that. It's not very good for the tree. A lot of times it'll promote suckering. It depends on the species of tree sometimes, if it promotes a lot of suckering or not. But you get a lot of suckers from it, and also kind of it's just not super good for the tree. It kind of rots out that base a little bit as well, especially if it's wet all the time. So you really want that to be above ground and not covered at all. So it's just not super beneficial for the long-term health of the tree. Um, Other common issues with trees is typically pruning issues. A lot of times when people go to cut a limb off, they either cut it where you leave a big dead stub on it, or they cut it way too close to the tree, so it leaves this really wide scar on the tree. So on branches on trees, they have a thing called the branch collar, which is where kind of all the hormones are. And one way to think of trees is they're kind of like submarines. So if a submarine gets punctured and there's water coming through a section, they close the door and they compartmentalize the submarine so only that one room is getting flooded with water instead of the whole submarine. And trees are kind of the same way. So when you cut the limb off the tree way too close, you're pretty much like cutting off that submarine door. It's not able to close the wound very good. Or if you're doing it the other way and you're leaving this big stub, the tree cuts it off at that branch collar, and then you have a dead stub. That's what it sacrificed when it did that. And so you kind of want to cut it right before that branch collar. It's a little hard to describe it without pictures or an example, but you'll see it, especially on more mature trees. They have a defined branch collar where it connects to the trunk of the tree. So that's a common issue. A really common practice I've seen in my area is where they do what's called pollering the trees, where they just trim off all the uh, all the branches and they trim it all the way just to the primary stems. That's usually not very good. They do it a lot to crepe myrtles. Some people refer to it as crepe murder. So it's just you're stressing out your tree by doing that, and it's just not very healthy for the tree. Now it can create like a ornamental look, I guess, but they're really not that attractive looking when they do that cut, at least for me personally. So those are probably some common mistakes I've seen. And a lot of times they do that for power lines and stuff like that. So if you ever need, like, for me, my rule of thumb, if you have to trim a tree every year to keep it in the right shape, then you should probably replace that tree with something else. And a lot of these main common landscape mistakes can really be resolved in the design phase. And that's something I stress a lot on this channel is if you get it right in the design phase, then you're not going to have all these long-term maintenance issues. That's where it all stems from. And so that's one of the reasons why I want to promote that on this channel is because if you're making all these mistakes in the beginning, planting trees that are too big for the area they're in, and all these sorts of things, which are extremely common. Once you notice these common landscape problems and mistakes, I mean, you'll just see them everywhere. It's extremely common, and you'll have landscape companies do it, and it's just not good overall. And so, again, if you're doing your proper planning, you really will reduce a lot of the headaches you'll have later down the road. You're not going to solve all your problems because there's always going to be something that pops up that you can't plan for. But we want to try to do our best to accommodate the landscape design to the land that we have. Let's see. So I'll talk about some of my favorite plants, moving on from that topic. So I really do enjoy native plants. That's been one of the topics I've done on this channel. I've done a couple of videos on native plants, and that might be something I go into a little bit more. I don't know if I want to 100% dive into that niche. There's a lot of already really good channels that talk about native plants, um, but it's something that I really enjoy. It's been a little bit of a journey for me. I kind of started my native plant journey when I first started working here back in Arkansas, and I did a lot of work with native Arkansas plants. I've kind of been slowly learning since then. over the past, I guess, 3 years now. So I'm pretty new into native plants. I don't know all the answers for them. So far, I'm most familiar with the Arkansas native plants. I'm not really a whole lot familiar with like West Coast plants, or if you're outside the United States, I'm not really familiar at all with your native plants. Um, One of the things I would like to do once I have some land is to do a, excuse me, is to do a native wildflower area, and that might be something that would be fun to do for a video. But some of my favorite plants, one of my favorites since moving here has been bee balm or monarda, is its Latin name. That one's been one of my favorites. I really enjoy its unique shape and look. I also really enjoy Black-Eyed Susans. They've probably been one of my favorite kind of late summer, fall flowering one. There's a lot of wild ones near where I live, and so I really enjoy seeing those each year. I think they're a very good display. And you can kind of pair them alongside with asters as well, and they look really good together. One of my favorite early spring ones has been Virginia bluebells and golden ragworts. Used to have it in my videos, a little clip of golden ragworts at Crystal Bridges, and those ones are really cool. They're pretty deer resistant. The deer don't mess with them too much. They really only look good for a few weeks while they're blooming in the spring, but the rest of the year, I mean, they're not terrible as it's kind of this green, leafy kind of ground cover. I mean, not terrible by any means, and I think they do a good job as a native plant. One of my favorite native grasses has been northern sea oats. I was walking my parents' property during the holidays and I found some wild native sea oats. And that was a really fun experience to be able to see those. And I collected their seeds so they can put them, because they were in a really shady spot in the forest. So I grabbed their seeds so we could put them in a better spot for them so they can grow a little bit better. So that was really fun. Let me think. Other favorite plants. I really like wisteria. I like both the Native American wisteria and the Japanese wisteria. I know the Asian wisteria is invasive, unfortunately, but I really love how the Japanese wisteria looks. It's probably one of my favorite flowering vines. They're super cool, and I really enjoy wisterias quite a bit. Then I guess talking about other plants, I have a lot of house plants. Probably have about a dozen or so in my house. The one to my left over here is what do you call it? A Monstera that I've had for a couple years now, and it's been doing really good. And I got one of these, I forgot what they're called. I always call it a flamingo plant, but that's what those, it starts with an A, but I can't quite remember how you pronounce it. But I have one of those as well right behind me on this side. I really enjoy house plants. Maybe I'll do some videos on house plants. I haven't really dived into interior scaping a whole lot, but I think a lot of people get intimidated by house plants. I see a lot of posts where people seem like um, where you lose house plants a lot, and I've definitely lost some house plants too. But as long as you know what your houseplant wants, I find that they're really not too difficult to take care of. Some houseplants can be more finicky than others. One of the go-tos that are super good as a houseplant are snake plants. I got one of them that I propagated from my mom had a snake plant, and I took some cuttings from it and I propagated it and I grew them, and now I got them in a pot over there. It's in the other room, but I'll show it to y'all maybe in another live stream. But they're pretty fun to propagate, pretty easy, and almost impossible to kill. I saw a guy did an experiment a couple years ago where he put a couple plants in a closet for like a year or so to see which ones would survive without any care. And I think the snake plant was one of the only ones that survived. So they're pretty tough to kill. So I enjoy those ones. So I'll go on to this is probably be the last topic for tonight, unless I have any of y'all ask any questions in the chat. But how can someone with no gardening experience start their landscape design process? Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to shake the camera, but I think that's a really good question. So if you don't have like a whole ton of gardening experience, it can be quite the challenge to go into it. Um, I think doing your research first is probably the number one step you should do. There's a lot of good gardening groups. There's like the Master Gardeners Associations and a lot of good Facebook groups that you can find in your area. So I do your research first and try to figure out what's going to be best for your area plant wise and know what kind of plants that you like to see if they can fit in your area. And definitely ask people you know around you that you know have gardening experience and they can help you out quite a bit. The main thing with plants to know would be your lighting or your lighting levels. Do they like full sun or shade? And what are the conditions on your site and how much water they need? As well, I mean, you those are probably the main two. It's also good to know about your soils, what kind of soil conditions you have. But if you know your lighting levels and your water, typically you can't go too wrong after that. So that'd be my main advice for that. I did see we have a comment from Daniel. Is the position of your channel that we can do landscape designs ourselves, or do you think we should hire professional landscape designers as an informed person? That's a good question. Kind of the point of my channel is to help teach you how to do it yourself. Just kind of the basics overall. I'd probably recommend, it kind of depends on the scope of your project. Um, if it's a really big project, I'd probably recommend going to a landscape professional for help. This has mainly helped to teach you the language of landscape design. That's kind of been the main purpose of my channel. I want to help you to understand how all the components work together. Because a lot of times, again, a lot of people necessarily don't have a whole lot of gardening experience or design experience. So it's kind of both, I would say. I want to help teach you how to do it yourself. Um, if you want to try to save money and to learn how to design a project yourself, if you feel confident that you can do that, I think you should go ahead. But it definitely doesn't hurt to reach out to a landscape professional. A lot of them, it kind of depends on the company, but some companies can come over to your site just for a walkthrough for free and talk to you about the process. But again, a lot of the times it depends on the company that you're working with. And I would definitely recommend that you do your research on which landscape company. A lot of times, uh, there's some landscape companies that don't do as good of quality of work than others. So I'd recommend looking at reviews on the company, or if you know someone that's worked with them and they've done a good job, just make sure that they have reputable sources. But I would definitely say a mix of both. I think a lot of times it can depend on the scope of the project. If we're just talking about planting a couple shrubs and installing some beds, if you feel like you can handle that yourself, I think you should go ahead and once you have it landscape design and go for it. But if you're like renovating an entire backyard, I'd probably recommend uh, looking into some contract work. But at the same time, you can, if you understand landscape design and you're able to kind of piece together a landscape design yourself, you can kind of work with the landscape designer at that company to get a better idea of your vision for your backyard. So that probably be the best way I think I can answer your question. So I guess going into landscape design, I would say again the probably the main focus of this channel is just to be an informative source of information. I'm not saying you have to do it this way or anything. I'm hopefully I'm just trying to give you a good idea of the tools that you need and the kind of language that you need to know when talking about landscape design. A lot of times, the main probably my main target audience is homeowners, I think. Just trying to help them understand the process of landscape design. A lot of times, if you inherit a house that has some of the more common issues like trees being too close together or too close to the foundation of your home, and any kind of common issues like that, that you'll hopefully be able to watch a video and to be able to learn how to resolve those mistakes and to be able to just kind of learn the language of landscape design, I would say is the main focus. Yeah, and I see you got one last question from Daniel. What is your opinion on living fences or construction fences? That's another good question. I definitely like the look of living fences. I guess I could have a couple definitions. One could be where you have some fence posts and wire and you have some vines growing on it as a living fence. Or there's another interpretation of a living fence where um, you don't have a barrier per se. You have a layers of different things from starting with some trees as your framework, shrubs, and then perennials in front as a living fence. I've heard that described that way as well. I definitely like the living fence approach. I think it might depend on your situation how close your neighbors are to you and stuff like that. I don't think a living fence would work quite as well if you're living in a suburb home. It might be a little awkward, but you might be able to make it work. But if you have more space around you, I think doing a living fence is the best way to create a kind of almost natural look. A lot of landscape design is about creating senses of enclosure and dividing natural space. And so doing a living fence where you have different layers of things. I probably should have brought up some images from some landscape designs I have, but hopefully you kind of make sense where you have like your evergreens and your deciduous trees and then your shrub layer and then your perennial layer, and all of that together kind of creates a living fence. So hopefully that makes sense, but I think they're both good. There's a lot of creative ways you can make constructive fences look cool. Um, there's um, on the top of my head, you can make like a lattice fence where you have vines growing in it, like I mentioned earlier. You can also use I've seen I haven't really seen one in real life, but I've seen in sketches where you have a fence, like a wooden fence, where you have in the middle you have vertical boards, and then on either side you have diagonal boards going like that, and you can kind of create a focal point that way. So there's different ways you can be creative with fences, and I think it's a lot of fun if you do that. But I think both have their uses, um, just depending on however your landscape design goes. Well, I think that'll probably be it for this live stream. We went for about 40 minutes or so. But again, if you have any, probably just to close, if you have any, probably the main thing I would like from y'all is just to comment down anything that you would like to see from me, any kind of topics, anything you think I can do better on, or a topic you would like me to revisit. Anything like that's going to help me to create videos that are going to be helpful for y'all and informative. And I'm looking forward to 2025. Like I said towards the beginning, my goal is to try to do my best to post at least once a week. Typically, excuse me, usually I post on usually Fridays or Saturdays at the end of the week has been my main schedule. And so I'm going to do my best to post once a week. But again, post down anything you would like to see from me, and I'll continue to do my best to create the most informative and reliable videos I can for y'all. But thank you again for watching this live stream, and I hope you enjoy watching Garden Theory. So I appreciate y'all.